All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for um, the fifth part of our empowerment series about advocacy, advocating for different types of services and supports in the classroom environment, how to advocate for those things effectively, and more importantly, empowering yourself with an understanding about the things you can advocate for in the classroom. So today, we're going to be talking about universal design for learning. We're going to learn a little bit more about what UDL is and then apply that to our ability to advocate for appropriate accommodations and modifications in the classroom setting that are going to maximize learning and participation for your student with Down syndrome. All right, so let's dig on in. So today we're going to talk about expectations for students with IEPs. I think it's important to understand, what having an IEP does for your student and what we can get out of an IEP. So understanding what those expectations are, so you have a clear foundational understanding about the supports and services you can request, and the different things that you can add into the IEP so that there's accountability there for follow through. We're going to dig into universal design for learning, just understanding a little bit more about what that looks like, and how it applies to your child with Down syndrome in a school setting. And with that, it kind of organically ushers into accommodations and modifications. These are the kinds of things that we're going to be doing in the classroom in order to help your child access learning and access participation. We're going to bring that into how we maximize participation. So, if we understand more about universal design for learning and how that um, lends to making accommodations and modifications in the classroom, now that we have your student, your child set up for success, how can we maximize the participation in a meaningful way? We're going to just touch on some of the evidence-based learning approaches that we have available in our lending library for free, for you to explore, for your education team to explore. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about that so that you understand all the different kinds of resources that we can provide to you, your child, and their educators. So with that, we will go through each section, and then I'll ask you guys if you have any questions at that time. Once we make it through the slide deck, if anyone else has any questions regarding accommodations and modifications, UDL, I'll be happy to address all of those at the end as well. But like I said, this shouldn't run 2 hours. We've got a small group today, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay. So just from a foundational standpoint here, we want to kind of highlight about students with IEPs and making sure that you understand what all comes with having an IEP. There are some things that we're not really told, and you have to kind of do some digging around and learn more about the IEP process and special education law to understand what your child is entitled to as a student with an IEP. So, did you know that students with IEPs do not have to be working at grade level standards? Up until the transitional year into freshman year of high school, students with IEPs can be working on different material at a lower grade level standard, and until you have the talk about a transition into high school and what your plan is for a diploma track. Um, did you know that students with IEPs can participate in Gen Ed even if they are working below grade level? They have the right to receive accommodations and modifications that will help them access learning and maximize participation. Students with IEPs benefit from differentiated methods of instruction, engagement, and expression. And they may benefit from different types of testing, different types of assessments, and grading strategies. These are all things that are good to know because that knowledge helps drive what you can ask for and have discussions about and plan with your education team. So with that, let's get into universal design for learning. So, Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, we call it, is part of the Every Student Succeeds Act under President Obama's administration. That was in 2015. And the Universal Design for Learning piece of the Every Student Succeeds Act is basically just laying framework. It's acknowledging that students benefit from differentiated methods of learning and engagement and participation because we all are very, very unique. We all have different learning strengths. We all have different challenges, and those come from a variety of reasons. It could be your background, your family life, your ethnicity, and your cultural background. It could be your socioeconomic status or background. It could be because you have a neurodivergent learner who learns things differently. It could be that a student has hearing or vision impairments and they need access in different ways. So there are lots of reasons why we need to look at individual learning styles. There are lots of reasons why teachers should be held accountable to that individualization of their instruction and their strategies. It's not easy to do because it requires a lot of retrofitting and one-on-one, attention and opportunities to really make more individualized assessments. So it's hard work, and because it's hard work, often you might find pushback in a school environment. You might hear teachers or other educators or peers say, "We don't do that. We can't just individualize instruction for one person or modify work for one person in this environment. We've got a whole bunch of other kids we have to work with." But this really applies to an entire classroom. Everyone, despite their ability, benefits from multi-sensory instruction. We want to feel it. We want it to be real, meaningful. We want to kind of dig our hands into it. And that's how we learn, right? Through meaningful engagement and interaction and instruction. And so universal design is kind of a teacher's passport to be able to shake things up, to be able to look at each of her learners and or his learners and determine what types of strategies can really help the student access learning. This is when we start to get creative. We break down barriers. We make learning an equitable experience for everybody involved in the classroom. And it's actually a really, really exciting um, topic for me. I think that it's a really, really exciting piece of framework, and that I would hope that teachers would want to and also be excited to engage in universal design practices. But it just takes a little bit more of an understanding. Some teachers may not have a lot of training or experience in universal design, and sometimes it's up to families to advocate for it, because with that awareness and understanding that your student has the right to be educated in multisensory ways so that they can access learning, then maybe this is when you can start that conversation and start working with your team to develop new strategies and differentiated practices so that your child can make appropriate progress and thrive in a school environment. Um, so yeah, we're really focused on equity with universal design. It gives teachers an opportunity to differentiate, so to change up the way they engage a student, utilizing strengths and motivators, keeping kids on their feet, giving them hands-on multisensory experiences. We can differentiate that. Not everyone has to just work on a worksheet, right? A teacher doesn't just have to lecture. There are lots of different ways to engage your diverse group of students. And so then with that, you have differentiated means of being able to present information, right, or content. You can present what you're doing in lots of different ways. We can engage students in ways that they can receive that lesson and receive the information through, again, multisensory opportunities and multimodal opportunities. And with that, it also gives a student the ability, we can differentiate the way a student delivers that understanding. Now, if we have a student that has significant and complex expressive language challenges, then we need to find a different way for that student to be able to express his or her understanding about the lesson or the activity. And by doing this and thinking on those individualized terms, we're giving more students an opportunity to learn in more meaningful ways, to really absorb the information in meaningful ways, and to express their understanding without those barriers. So yeah, UDL is a really cool thing, and more and more schools are starting to adopt, some UDL practices, but there are some schools that, really aren't practicing. And so you would probably know if your team seems like a team that is working with you on accommodations and modifications and differentiation, or maybe it's something that you need to work with your team now that you have an understanding of what a teaching team can do in order to educate your child. And for us, with universal design, there's kind of a, I mean, there's kind of a formula, right? There are lots of different ways you can approach differentiation, but when you kind of break it down into tangible chunks here, what it's about really is just having a clear understanding about the facts about the student, right? A clear understanding of facts about who that kiddo is, who that student is, what are their strengths, what are their areas of need, what are their IEP goals, what are their current and present levels, um, what are their motivators and interests, what are things that are completely off the table for them, that are highly dysregulating, things that we need to avoid. Understanding those types of facts about a student gives us a foundational understanding, a holistic view of the student. And then with that, it's important to understand the facts about the classroom, getting to know your teaching team, getting to know what their style is. What does this class look like? Does the teacher do a lot of lectures? Does the teacher rely on, well, think about your setting. If your placement setting is at all in general ed, and you're pushing in either in gen ed for part of the day, or you're fully included in gen ed, that setting and the facts about the teacher in the classroom are going to look a whole lot different than if your child is participating in a special day class in a mild to moderate or moderate to severe program. They might have they may already have other tools and strategies in place to accommodate a student with significant disabilities that a gen ed teaching team may not have in place or experience using. So it's just understanding the facts, right? With the information, with facts, that's how we can start making informed choices. And so when we're looking at facts about the student, and we're looking at facts about the teacher, the classroom teaching style, the setting, then we can start identifying the mismatches, right? And when we identify those mismatches, for example, let's say there's a student who is participating in gen ed, and it's a third grade classroom. They are at a third grade reading level, but this particular student is at a kindergarten reading level, or maybe just still learning sight words, right? So we see a mismatch there. So we have to think about what this teacher is working on and the curriculum and the lesson. And then we understand what our IEP goals are, right? Facts about that student. And we start to figure out how we can differentiate things, shake things up, get creative in order for that student to access the IEP goals within the lesson and also be able to participate with the rest of the class. And we're going to go through some scenarios so that you guys can have a clear understanding about some examples with that. But once we can identify those mismatches, we can start to fill in the gaps. And this does take a group effort, right? This takes a team effort. This takes a teacher and a para and maybe even leadership in the school to believe in this process. It might take some consult hours so that the team can kind of deconstruct things and figure out appropriate ways to modify curriculum to help that student access the learning itself in the classroom and the thematic unit or the lesson. And so it does take a group effort. And sometimes our parents have to be the leaders in that effort, by understanding what they can do, with a little bit of support and a little bit of teamwork, and some time planned for it that's maybe written into the IEP. So once you're kind of armed with that knowledge, you know what you can ask for at an IEP meeting in regard to differentiated instruction, accommodations, modifications. So this is how we figure out how to remove those barriers so that your child, the learner, has an equitable opportunity to learn. And that's all we're asking for here. It's very important to remember we're going to utilize strengths and motivators. You guys can probably all agree that if your kid is not motivated, not ready, and interested with what's going on, they may withdraw and not participate. And so it's really important for us to remember, what motivates our child? What motivates my child to learn, to stay engaged, and really keep those things at the top of your head. So we wanted to just go ahead and make sure everybody's clear about what accommodations look like in a classroom and modifications, because they are different and they can apply to different students. So accommodations, they adjust how a student learns. And so what that means is that you can, well, let's say it says address how much time they're given to complete work, how they will show content mastery, and what supports they can use to access content. So we're providing them with supports. We're providing them with maybe, extra time or a separate space. We're giving them different types of supports so that they can access the same content everybody else is doing at a grade level standard. Okay, so students with 504s, they get accommodations only, because they are entitled to supports that are going to help them do all the work everybody else is doing in class, and it is at a grade level standard. Some examples of that are listening to an audiobook version of a novel the class is reading. So maybe, reading the content is difficult for the child, could be a number of reasons for that. Being able to hear the same book at the same level, in an audio form, we're just differentiating how the content is being received. So that's an accommodation. Using an aide as a scribe while they dictate their essay. So they're still doing the same assignment that everyone else is doing, but in a differentiated way. They're dictating instead of adding the demand of handwriting. Okay. Because the goal is to express ideas, right? And so if they can focus on expressing ideas and dictate them, a scribe can write them down, and you're still accessing the same lesson and doing what everybody else is doing, just in a different way. Masking half of a math worksheet at a time. So just removing all the visual clutter, but they're still accessing the same problems. They're accessing the same number of problems. Completing a shortened math worksheet with the same array of problems, types, and difficulties. And so again, held to that same standard, but it may be presented in a different way, a different format. So modifications, they actually adjust the what a student learns. Okay, so we're changing the expectations for what a student will learn at the grade level content. So this means that a student does not have to be learning the same things and working at grade level standards in order to participate, in a particular placement setting or class. They can work. The content is very specific to what are tied to their IEP goals. So what that means is you might be reading an abridged version of the novel that the class is reading, right? Maybe something like a shared reading book that is just at a lower grade level, but it's still reviewing the same content, right? One of my colleagues, some examples she gave was, the students are learning about Egypt, and there's a huge passages of text to read about Egypt, and the kids go through it all. And she went and checked out like first readers. There are tons of like National Geographic for kids and different informative um, types of shorter books, abridged versions that give you all the same key topics of content. And so he was able to access the content, learn key vocabulary and key themes about the content, but at the level that he was reading. So we were able to break down that barrier, and he's still accessing the lesson or the thematic unit. Being assigned an essay that is significantly shorter or about a less complex topic. So still accessing the lesson or the expectation, which is writing an essay, but we're not going to include the same demands. They may access writing the essay in a different way, which is just kind of an accommodation, but maybe they can write about just one piece of the whole kind of subject matter, something that's tied to it that's just a little less complex. So we can change the what, the expectation that's there and the output that we're asking for from that student. Working on number identification through an assignment that the class is using to work on multiplication, right? So we're tying in that IEP goal of just number identification. Maybe the student's working on identifying numbers 1 through 20, and we're tying that in to an entire classroom unit about multiplication, where the class is working on more complex problems, but the student can actually see different numbers on those worksheets, and maybe they're just working on circling the number 2. And so just looking at it that way, those are what modifications are. You're kind of changing the what of it all. And I'm going to go through these next couple of slides, and then I'll pause in case anyone has questions before we move on to maximizing participation. So with modifications, though, and the reason I'm telling you all of this is because a lot of times I talk with families and they don't quite understand, like, how do you modify something? Like, what does that mean? How can I advocate for appropriate modifications so that my child is not, running and hiding or eloping when he gets the same worksheet that everybody else got? And so it's having a more basic and foundational understanding of what modifications can be. I think that this empowers you to be able to start that conversation with your school team, and understanding that you can change things up and tie in these modifications to what the whole class is learning. Yes, very helpful to hear examples. Yes. Okay. And we will get to that. Oops, but let me go back here because we had not finished that one. Okay. So with modifications, modifications make the curriculum achievable, right? We're breaking down the barriers and just giving a student equitable access to all or part of the curriculum, a tie-in or the entire curriculum. It involves combinations of altered content, conceptual difficulty, educational goals, and instructional methods. And this is all through that differentiation, utilizing universal design. And the one thing that we always encourage and always talk about is a strengths-based approach, focusing on strengths. I can't tell you how many times I've had to hear teachers, and it's kind of disheartening to hear, but I used to sit in on IEP meetings, and we don't do that anymore, but we have in the past supported some families, and I've sat in on IEP meetings and had to hear a team talk about all the things a student cannot do, and why they wouldn't be able to access a certain placement or a certain setting, because they can't do what the other kids are doing. He can't read all that. He can't count, on this level. And so really understanding that that's okay, and that you can still advocate for what you think is best for your child, even if that child's not working at the grade level standards. and then understanding how you can advocate for the entire team to start changing that lens to something that's more of a can do, right? From a can do perspective. And so if we're taking a look at facts about the student and assumptions made by teachers, educators, or specialists who may not yet know what the student's capable of, they may say they can't read or write. Well, okay, if the student can't read or write, what can they do? Can they type? Can they use assistive technology? Can they dictate for someone else to be a scribe and write down their thoughts and ideas? Can they highlight certain words? Can they use peer supports to help them access what they're learning? Can they listen to an audio version of what they're reading? Can they use visuals or graphic organizers to break content down into smaller chunks, more manageable chunks, right? So thinking about what all can my child do that can help my child access the instruction, the lesson, the unit. They can't add or subtract. Well, okay, they can use a calculator. And if you're working with an IEP, guess what? Your child has the right to have access to a calculator. It's an awesome way to reinforce math concepts, work on number identification. It's engaging, it's motivating, and it's a tool that can be used to help your child access problems and problem solving and math content. You can use manipulatives or a number line, lots of different things to help reinforce these concepts, especially with something like math. It's so abstract. Or you'll say, especially as students get older and the gap widens, you will say things like, you will hear things like, well, they can't learn the whole thing. It's impossible for them to be able to digest and learn everything I'm teaching about, Egypt, right? Well, what can they learn? They can learn key vocabulary, big ideas. They can learn certain definitions for specific key words that are a part of this thematic unit. So we might not be able to get every single detail, but chances are your child is going to walk away with something. So they can learn something, and let's focus on how we can simplify and break that down to make it manageable and achievable for that student. So that's the big concept there with that. And so at the end of the day, we're not looking for every student to have access to the same things. We're looking for every student to have the access they need and the supports they need in order to access learning. Without that, they are not going to be able to make meaningful progress. And so it is really important that a student with an IEP has a team who is ready to to kind of dive in and take a look at all of these student facts, at the mismatches between student and classroom facts, at strengths and motivators, and then start problem solving about ways we can start removing barriers and give students access to learning itself. So with that, I want to ask if you guys have any questions before we kind of break down ways to maximize participation. No questions? No. Okay. Well, with that, we'll just carry on. So we recently just wrapped up our communications readiness program, where we had students participating in a school environment, and we are trying to fill in the gaps with communication so that their school team has an understanding about strategies and tools that will help maximize communication and participation in a setting. And one thing we decided to do this year is we created a participation plan. We gave them examples of different types of communication or visuals or supports that we found were successful in our kind of controlled classroom setting. And we gave them examples of how they could use those tools in a classroom setting, be it like circle time or at recess or the library. We created a plan that they can say, oh, okay, circle time, I can use this tool, and this is how we can program it so that this child has access to be able to participate. And so it's really important to think about that when you are meeting with your school team. How can we plan for my child's for meaningful participation in the classroom? And so you're going to hear me say it over and over again. We utilize a strengths-based approach. We're constantly looking at the cans and not the can'ts. Incorporating preferred and non-preferred activities to increase engagement and motivation. So instead of just demand, 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 break, demand, 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 break, really working with those, first and thens, and creating, a nice balance between highly preferred and motivating activities, and then mix that with a non-preferred demand. But that really helps keep our kids engaged. It helps reduce or prevent big behaviors, which is communication. Because if the demand is too great, then it will, unfortunately, we might see behaviors, we might see other kind of actions in the classroom that we are challenging. And so we just want to make sure that we are being mindful about keeping them engaged with interesting, motivating activities. Let's see, we develop an inclusion matrix based on daily or weekly schedule to help parents and teachers identify the opportunities for meaningful participation. So this is something that I've done with schools and education teams, where I've taken a look at, and we have as a group, right? And this is something that you could ask for with your school team. Let's take a look at a weekly calendar, a weekly schedule. What are the times scheduled for each thing we're working on, right? What does the day look like? And how can we work together to plan for ways to help maximize participation and inclusion? How can we differentiate things in this particular setting in order to help maximize participation while my child is pushing into this environment? Or how can we differentiate in this particular setting so that my child is accessing social skills? And so it's really taking a look at the schedule and digging in with your team to understand how you can work together to maximize a more meaningful education. It's really, really important. And, one of the units of the series is all about communication. That is a foundational piece. We want to make sure that from the most basic level, that communication needs are being met, ensuring that your team has access to any type of AAC, whether that's no tech, low tech, light tech, high tech, that your student has access to multimodal means of communication. If we can't communicate our thoughts, ideas, our wants, our needs, our understanding, then that's when we are going to see more problems and challenges in the classroom. So from a foundational level, making sure communication supports are in place, and then making sure that knowing that your child benefits from visual reinforcement, from being able to see pictures or labels, that simple schedules to help plan next steps or to make choices, making sure that those types of accommodations are in the classroom setting to just front load success. Because with access to those things, we can start to foster more independent participation in a classroom setting, and just empower our students to have a voice and to be in charge of the way they navigate school. So those things are always important. We always want to keep families mindful about that. Every IEP meeting, it's like, let's make sure we've got this communication plan in place going into the school year. And so just wanted to touch on that one. If a student's working below grade level, how can we tie her IEP goals into what's being taught in the classroom? It requires planning and collaboration. So you're going to have to take a look at the schedule. You want to make sure that you've identified that your student may need accommodations and modifications. What are those going to be? These are things that you can add on your IEP. There's an entire section about whether your student needs accommodations and modifications or assistive technology or AAC. And you want to make sure that you're addressing each of those pieces. And you can bring in a laundry list. You have every right as an equal part of the IEP team to bring in a list of all the things that you think will be supports for your child in order for your child to make appropriate progress. Obviously, within reason, right? We want to make sure that we're being reasonable. We do understand and empathize that a teacher has an entire classroom, but we can ask for reasonable accommodations. We can ask for modifications to curriculum. And with doing that, we can also ask them to identify the who's, the what's, the when's, who's going to be doing this? What kind of adjustments are they going to be making? What kind of modifications? What does that look like? And how are we going to make sure that that is effective? Like, how are we going to test the student? You can modify the way test scores. You could be a pass fail. It could be a portfolio of work. All of these, it could be grades, obviously tied specifically to those IEP goals and making progress toward the goals. So you can change your testing system. You can change your grading system. And so it's all about making those adjustments with the team and really looking at accommodations and modifications in that way. What are all the hows and the whats that we can have a discussion about, and then identify the who's so that there's accountability. And you want to make sure it's all on your IEP so that they are tied to those modifications. They're tied to those accommodations. They are tied to goals that maybe are associated with some of those modifications and accommodations. And by doing so, this gives parents and teachers more tangible assessment opportunities. We are, with that planning, with that collaborative effort, with hopefully a healthy homeschool communication system in place, so that you can understand what progress is being made. Everyone's on the same page. We can actually see and probably gain a better sense of what the student is understanding if that student is accessing their learning through these multisensory methods. And so that's why just making sure that the participation and the IEP goals are all included, right, on that IEP. These are the goals and this is how we're going to access them. These are all the ways we're going to access these goals, and they're written down here too. So let's go through some examples. And before we go to the second page that has some ideas, I'll see if anyone has any ideas when we read each scenario, and you can tell me. So Sarah is fully included in her general education class, but she's working below grade level. Her teacher is giving whole group instruction about the concept of even and odd numbers. Sarah's current math goal is related to identifying numbers 1 through 20. How can Sarah's teacher include and engage Sarah in this instruction? So does anyone have any ideas about how the teacher can help Sarah access her IEP goals while also meaningfully involving her in this instruction? Anyone?
I can try.
Hey, thank you, Jiwan.
So if they're working on odd and even numbers on paper and recognizing them, maybe Sarah can highlight 1 to 20 or the number that she's working on. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's and you know it's like that seems kind of simple, right? It's like, oh wait, yeah, here's the 9P goal. They're all numbers, so wouldn't matter if they're working on long division. If Sarah is working on number identification, we can tie that goal into the work that her peers are doing. And let's take a look and see. Anyone else have an idea? Otherwise, I can move to the next page and read some of the ideas here. So having materials available, so her being able to access what she needs includes having the tools that help reinforce what she's working on. So having materials like a number line, I'm telling you, for our students with Down syndrome, having a number line is a really great tool to have in the classroom setting if you're working on math concepts. Having a number line available, or a calculator, manipulatives, things like that, materials that will just help reinforce what she's working on. Ask Sarah to name or point to or draw a number between 1 and 20, then choose a classmate to answer whether the number is even or odd. So this is now empowering Sarah with some meaningful participation. She gets to pick a number, you know, that she's working on with her number recognition, and then gets to actually play teacher and call on a student, call on a peer. And, you know, a lot of times our students with Down syndrome, especially those who are participating in a gen ed classroom setting for any amount of time, are often kind of left in the dark and in the shadows because they may not be answering something super quickly. And they might, you know, need a little extra prompting or supports or visual aid. And so then they get kind of left behind. All the other kids are answering questions in class, and then that fear of failure sets in, the anxiety, you know, feeling not a sense of belonging. And so we want to make sure we're thinking along those lines. How can we get creative? So I love that idea because that empowers Sarah with kind of a big helper role, and helps her participate with the other kids kind of in real time. When the teacher names a number, if it's between 1 and 20, you can ask Sarah to name the number before she calls on another member of the class to answer whether it's even or odd. So instead of asking Sarah to generate a number and write it down, maybe you know, maybe the teacher is able to add that additional prompt depending on where her level is, and then she can call in a student. So we just have kind of added another step to that. Pair Sarah with a peer. I can't tell you enough and how important it is to talk with your team too about meaningful peer supports. Not only is this going to be, you know, not only do peer supports are, not only do peer supports help a student who may not be learning at the same level, but the value to a student with a disability who's working with a peer who is modeling, not only modeling the work they're doing, but modeling appropriate behaviors and modeling active listening, encouraging that student, and understands how to support her in ways that is not doing the thing for her, but encouraging and fostering independence. So peer supports play a huge role. Our students with Down syndrome would probably much rather, you know, learn from a peer and you know they're imitating a lot of what their peers do. They want to feel a sense of belonging, they want to be part of the group. So you know, talking openly with your teachers about keeping an eye on the students who tend to be good leaders, tend to be empathetic, and tend to show, you know, support to your child, and look at opportunities where maybe some peers can work alongside your child instead of always having that one-on-one aid right there, or again your kiddo like in the back of the class just kind of, or at the front of the class kind of segregated from the other students. So there are just different ways that we can maximize that access while adding in stuff that is motivating and empowering for the student, your child. So also utilizing, and I said manipulatives before, but I'm tagging Numicon here because Numicon is a manipulative approach, but it's fixed manipulatives, and it's an evidence-based approach that we offer from our lending library. That is supports the learning profile of a student with Down syndrome. We've seen a lot of success with Numicon, and so being able to talk about accommodations and modifications, an accommodation could be access to Numicon manipulatives. That's not a curriculum. They don't have to learn, do a major training on a teaching approach. It's access to a fixed manipulative, which works better for fine motor. And again, it's an evidence supported approach. Oh, hold on just a second. We have someone just joining us. Hello. It's an evidence-based approach. And so talking about your team, about things like that, that is differentiated way to engage your child in learning math concepts. But we also know that evidence supports it. And so those are some things that we can always talk about in one-on-one consults. Know that I'm always available for follow-up to schedule a one-on-one Zoom. We can take a look at your IEP. We can take a look at, questions you have where you think there are gaps in your child's education right now, in the setting or in the homeschool communication. And we can work together to brainstorm some ideas that you can share with the team that might help start bridging those gaps. And then we're also always happy to talk with your school teams about the different types of free services and support we offer educators. And so we're here always. You're always welcome to email me and schedule a one-on-one for further kind of questions or really digging into your IEP. Let's see here. Here's another one. All right. Sam has difficulty communicating, but loves his peers and gets excited about circle time and calendar every morning. Unfortunately, because it takes Sam more time to process and communicate his thoughts and ideas, he's often overlooked when his peers quickly raise their hands to answer questions about the day of the week, the day of the month, and the weather. How could Sam's teacher and parents collaborate to help Sam feel more included in circle time? Anyone have any ideas? If not, I can go ahead and share the next slide. So first and foremost, remembering best practices. We can remind our school team, and also you can invite me to come out and do an ability awareness presentation for free, actually either virtually or in person, where we'll talk with your child's classroom, your child's teaching team, your child's entire school in an assembly style presentation. And we can teach the team about best practices, about effective strategies and approaches that help foster success for a student with Down syndrome, and that help peers understand how they can support their peers in the classroom, and to understand a little bit more about equity, understand a little more about why their peer may have an AAC device and they don't, right? So things like our ability awareness presentation empower both students and teachers with a little more understanding and a lot more empathy and just awareness at the end of the day, so that they can understand, oh, when I'm in a classroom setting, if I'm talking with my friend who has Down syndrome, after I ask a question, I need to wait 10 seconds and give him time to process. And so that's a strategy you could use in circle time. If the whole class knows and the teacher knows that 10 seconds can mean the difference between Sam actually answering the question all on his own or not, then that's a great way to help empower that classroom to remember to give him that time, right? But another idea, if that's not the solution that best fits Sam and his challenges, then you can pre-plan how the student will participate. So for example, you talk and say, I know he wants to participate in calendar time. Can we program his step-by-step talker so that on Monday, He has a prompt. He knows to raise his hand, or the teacher can call on him randomly. She asks him what the day of the week is, and he can push his talker and it says Monday. And so working with your team to try to kind of front load ideas about how that student can participate in the classroom setting in a meaningful way. And then otherwise, you can provide Sam with the tools to help him communicate his answer. So yeah, he might have that talker. Maybe he's got just a visual sign that says Monday. Maybe you give him two choice cards. One says Monday and one says Tuesday, and he gets to, let you know which one he thinks it is. And so there are lots of different ways, and it's just about getting creative, and with your teaching team, and helping them understand, and advocating on ways of how to maximize that participation in the classroom. Here's one. Teacher is lecturing about energy. Jenny's IEP goal is related to identifying 3 to 5 key terms for each unit and matching each term with a simplified definition. So if we're looking at facts about the student, we know that that's her goal. And so how can we maximize Jenny's participation in this lecture? So we can see that there is probably a mismatch, right? So let's take a look and see how we can fill in those gaps by differentiating. So we can provide visual examples of each key concept: sun, wind, and water. So she has those visuals available. As the teacher lectures and names a type of energy, Jenny could hold up a picture of the key word. And that may require some prompting, but that's showing that she is engaged, that she's listening, and that she's identifying, that's part of her IEP goal. She's identifying that key word through a picture or a label, and she's showing her teacher that she's there and engaged in the lesson. You can utilize a peer or buddy to help prompt. Again, peer supports, especially as our kids get even older and older, are just so, so important and so valuable. Provide visual aids and appropriately leveled text, so it might be at a different reading level, to help Jenny access those key concepts. So as she's listening, she might just have the pictures in front of her, maybe some highlighted text, or just specific pages, or just smaller paragraphs of text that just focus on those vocabulary words. You can ask Jenny to call on other students who are raising a hand. This gives Jenny an opportunity to still feel involved, even if she may not know the particular answer. She can be a peer support to somebody else by calling on a student. This makes her feel like a part of the group. This makes her feel like she's participating, and that empowers a student to stay focused and to stay engaged and motivated to participate in the lesson. Allow Jenny differentiated means of expression to demonstrate her knowledge. Maybe she uses a visual picture book that she's created. She's drawn or painted or cut out pictures and pasted them. Maybe she uses movement, or she has written a song that talks about wind, sun, and water energy, and she could act it out. Maybe she could act it out with a peer. These are different methods and differentiated ways to express an understanding, and Jenny has the right to do that through Universal Design for Learning. You can provide meaningful multisensory opportunities for the entire class, including Jenny. So this is just a differentiated way to engage her, having hands-on multisensory experiences to help enhance the learning process for everybody. And that's the thing I think a lot of teachers don't realize, that they can differentiate content, and that applies to the entire classroom, even, in a classroom that has mostly filled with neurotypical kids. Everybody appreciates diverse learning opportunities. And so this is a great way for students to learn together in multisensory ways. It presents opportunities for socialization, cooperative work together. And so just talking with your team about multisensory instruction, and where they are with that, asking them about, what do these lessons look like, so that with you having that understanding, you can start generating ideas about how maybe it might be helpful to differentiate so that your child can access the lessons they're going to be presenting. And so we have, like I mentioned, we have a lending library. And in our lending library, we have multiple literacy and math approaches. Some of them are evidence-based. Some of them are just tried, tested, tried and tested and true for many, many of our families who found that they're just very, very effective. And we have multiple recorded workshops. We have one, I know for sure, for So Happy to Learn. We have one for special reads and for special needs, the whole child reading program of Natalie Hale. We have a Numicon, pre-recorded Numicon workshop that's available as well. And See and Learn and Touch Math are See and Learn is an evidence-based approach. And Touch Math, we just got a grant. We were able to bring in some Touch Math kits, but I've used Touch Math with students with Down syndrome in the past and have found any opportunity we have to reinforce concepts through different ways. I'll do a combination of Touch Math and Numicon because that helps us understand if our student is generalizing the knowledge that they're gaining from a particular approach. And so having access to these different types of approaches to explore, see how they work with your child at home. If you feel like it's effective and you want to bring it to the school, or you just want to talk with the school about it right away and have the school talk with me about getting that learning approach and exploring it at school. We loan out our kits for 3 months at no charge. And then you can always check back in if it's something that it's really, really working for you and you just need a little more time before either you buy a kit or the school is going to buy a kit. We'll work with you on that. But just so you know, we want everybody to know that we have free access to approaches that we know are effective for our learners with Down syndrome. So introducing that to your team, letting them know that you have a valuable resource with Down Syndrome Connection, that not only can we provide training and workshops for educators, we can do one-on-one consults with your education team in a safe space where they can ask me candid questions, discuss their concerns outside of an IEP meeting or a family meeting. They can learn about these evidence-based approaches. They can schedule an ability awareness presentation. And so understanding that we can help be a bridge for them to access the things they need to access in order to break down those barriers for your child. We're here to help with that as well. We can help your teaching team understand ways to modify. I've taken homework from schools, examples of homework that's coming home with kids, and then I will, based on their strengths and motivators, and the IEP goals, create examples of how you can modify that lesson in order to help that child access. So always happy to help create some examples, tangible examples of that work that you can take to your team as well, just to help them better understand what we're talking about with meaningful modifications. Let me see, I've got a chat here. Share a copy of the slide deck. Sure, no problem. I'm happy to share a PDF of the slide deck with everybody who attended today. No problem at all. And thanks for joining us. Sorry that you missed the first part of it, but I will send the slide deck. And we are recording this, and we're going to make the recording available to all of our members as well. So with that, we want to, sorry, one more. Thank you. Yes, no problem. Oops, that was an accident. Here we go. So with that, I think that when we're talking about advocacy, when we're talking about, having a solid understanding about the things that you can advocate for, and that involves a lot of communication with your team, a lot of healthy communication with your team. It's really at the foundation of it all. And so really optimizing your homeschool communication is key when it comes to advocating for the supports and services and accommodations and modifications that your child needs in order to make appropriate progress in school and to thrive and to meaningfully participate. So having that IEP meeting to discuss present levels, not what are the assessment results, right? Most of the time, assessment results do not at all reflect the truth about your child's strengths, what your child knows. The testing is just not geared toward a student with cognitive and fine motor and disabilities. So yeah, cognitive and physical disability and fine motor challenges and communication challenges, and so they're set up really to score poorly for the most part. And so having a real talk with your team about present levels, what you're seeing at home versus what they're seeing in the classroom. If you have any videos of your child doing certain things that they're not seeing in the classroom, collecting those types of things that you can share with the team so they may understand how they can best engage to get the same information. But really being on top of things to, discussing your goals at a glance, making sure that everyone's on the same page with IEP goals. We all have a clear understanding of what these goals are, understanding what the curriculum modifications are going to look like kind of in general, right? Having a plan for that. And again, identifying the who, right? The what, the how. They might need more planning time. There might need to be some co-teaching, consults with a special ed teacher if your child's in a gen ed setting. And so talking about how they can get that done, who's going to do it, and getting those things on your IEP so that there's accountability there. And so again, with accommodations and modifications, remembering things that your child needs in order to stay successful. Does your child have sensory needs? Your child may need access to sensory breaks, more movement, trampoline time, a little sensory corner in a quiet space with, jewelry and sensory brushes, so thinking about those are all accommodations. And so thinking about those things as well. And again, making sure you have those things written down on your IEP. Frequent check-ins. So I always say you can ask, you can ask for a Cadillac, but the school can only promise you a Chevy, and it's going to get you where you need to go, but they can't make any bigger promises than that. So you could ask for a school team to check in with you every single day, but that's probably going to feel pretty frustrating for them because they've got a lot of different students that they have to work with. So asking the team what feels reasonable for them, letting them know that you are highly invested in wanting to help bring the skills and bring the skills, what they're learning, how they're practicing it. You want to help them and continue to work on that. Repetition is huge. You want to continue helping your child at home practice the same skills they're learning in school. And so therefore, what is a reasonable homeschool communication? What's the method? Do you prefer email, text? Is there an app that works for both parties that's super easy and user friendly to use? Talking with your team about that, getting their input and feedback, and making sure you're just letting them know this is, I just want to be a part of the team. I want to help you by helping my child at home generalize the skills he's learning at school. And I respect your time, and I understand that he's not your only student, right? So what works for you, and let's make it work together. And then not getting too overwhelmed by goals. This isn't as tied to the accommodations and modifications, but just making sure when you now have all of the pieces in place to differentiate. You've got the supports, you've got the accommodations and the modifications, you've got the visuals, you've got the communication supports in place. And so now that all of these pieces are in place, making sure that you're working in small, tangible chunks with these goals, right? And making sure that each goal, as you're looking at maybe 1 to 2 goals, that those goals, we're seeing that now the supports are working. We're seeing that this work is being appropriately modified. The demand is appropriate. We're seeing that it's effective. My child's engaging. The participation is working. Otherwise, it can start to feel really, really overwhelming. And so just kind of like honing into a goal or two to try this out and see how it's working with the team, and then come back together and talk about, what's working, make adjustments as needed, seeing if the student is adjusting to all of the different modifications and accommodations that are taking place, and then go from there. And with that, I believe we have reached the end of our slide deck. And so I would love to ask you guys for any questions, feedback, concerns, comments, anything at all to that in regard to accommodations and modifications or universal design, or how that ties to an IEP, how you get the conversation started, any questions at all. I'm happy to answer.
I have some questions.
Okay.
My son's IEP has accommodations and services,
Mhm,
but they refuse to use words modification for some reason.
mhm.
And the school psychologist in particular makes it sounds like modifying curriculum means he's going to be in different, I don't know, I don't know, like different route for going to school.
Mhm.
And so they haven't done modification in the classroom. I mean, to get para, it took us 6 months to get para for
Yeah.
one.
And
Then,
G1, would
yeah,
you feel comfortable just letting, for the group purposes, just saying the age of your or grade,
oh, sure,
and the placement setting, so that everyone has kind of a picture
sure.
of.
Uh, Elizabeth, is this being recorded?
Yeah, you don't have to say his full name. Just
Oh, okay,
you don't have to say his name. Just your child's age or
okay.
grade,
Son
and
is
then just the
6 years
placement.
old. Yeah, and first grade. I mean, going into first grade this fall, and he is in gen ed.
Okay.
Probably 80%, 20% pull out for services.
Sure, sure. And so this is not uncommon. I have a lot of families who have kids participating in gen ed, and they get pushback from their education team that if the child is in gen ed, then they don't qualify for modifications. They cannot modify the curriculum in order to allow that student, access to it. And that's just simply not true. Your child is entitled to modifications. They are entitled to having the what change, so that they can access their IEP goals while tying it to curriculum. It is all in IDEA. At 2004, it absolutely lists modifications that the child can be working under grade level. Now, the only time this changes is up until the transition year into freshman year. When you have that transition meeting, your school team is going to ask if you are working toward full diploma track. So that means your child is passing all state standards. They've completed all of the required courses in high school to be able to graduate with a typical high school diploma. That means 2 years of foreign language, the different math requirements, history, science, and they would be completing all of the standardized assessments, passing all of the standard grade level tests, and would have to, complete all of the course requirements in order to get that typical diploma.
Okay.
There are some families who choose to go that route, And then there are other families who decide that instead of pushing their student with Down syndrome to try to achieve all of the same things in that environment, that they'd rather focus on certain, like mastery over certain skills, literacy, literacy, math concepts, so that they have the life skills they need, life skills courses, being able to navigate your environment around you, get from point A to point B. A lot of our families really want their child to feel a part of their community. In that gen ed setting, they recognize that real life isn't segregated into, by ability. And so wanting that socialization, wanting to get those peer supports. So every family has a different idea and a different vision about what they want. And that doesn't mean if a family decides not to shoot for typical diploma track, that they don't have high expectations for their child. It's a very personal choice about what you feel is going to serve, and eventually, what your own child feels is going to serve them best as they get into high school, and those demands are there, and they start asking you about which diploma track you want to be on. But until you have that conversation, your child does not have to be working at grade level in order to participate in gen ed. And because your child does not have to be working at grade level, your child is entitled to modifications that simplify instruction and that tie the curriculum they're working on to your child's individual IEP goals. There are even things called core, common core connectors. So we look at what is a standard, what's a curriculum standard here, and then how can we connect to the common core by adjusting or modifying, so that this particular standard is now accessible to this particular learner. And if that scaffolding isn't actually helping, then we even have a second connector that might simplify it even more, reduce the demands even more. And so it really is about having to push back to your team and say, my child actually has the right to modifications, to curriculum modifications in this general education setting, and can uh, be working below grade level in this classroom. And it is our responsibility to be able to help him make progress toward his IEP goals. So we need to figure out how we're going to do that by making appropriate modifications to the curriculum and to the homework assignments and to the activities that are presented to the group, to the class.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, I get it all the time, and it's really just about awareness. And if they need some literature to support what you're advocating for, then there's plenty out there that they can read up on to make sure that we know what we're talking about.
That's right. Yeah, I do have the rights, and it's written accommodations and modifications.
It's true. It's
But
true.
I know, yeah.
I do want to say this, right? Because our teachers are not our enemies, right? A lot of our teachers, especially in the gen ed placement setting, they're overwhelmed, they're underpaid, they're undertrained, they might lack experience in working with a student with significant disabilities, and they're not getting any kind of scaffolding or instruction or support from anyone else around them, and are kind of left with having to try to navigate this on their own. They may not even understand that a student doesn't have to be working at grade level standards, because all they've ever done is taught kids, typically developing kids, in a general ed placement setting. And so we want to empathize with that and what all teachers take on. And we want to help them understand by, being able to present them with the information and let them know that there are, you have resources who can help, who understand that this is a big job. But I hear it a lot that I can't get this. They think that it's their job, because it is. That's what a teacher's job is. The teacher's job is to help a child make appropriate progress in in their classroom setting. They all really, all of it is supposed to get a student on track through. So special education is technically supposed to serve as a way to really pile on that specialized academic instruction so that you can eventually work a student who may be working below grade level and get them up to grade level standards. That's what a teacher's job is. And so when a teacher starts thinking, or when we start presenting the concept of being able to work with a student who is working below grade level, and the gaps might even continue to widen, right? It goes against everything that they are supposed to do, which is help these students pass, help these students, pass that grade by showing that they have mastered all of these grade level standards, and so it's really about having a conversation, showing empathy for the teacher as well, and then asking, how you can share information with them so that they feel supported, because you understand that this might not be something that they've done before. But a lot of times there's just a simple lack of awareness, I find, with a lot of teachers, especially again in that gen ed setting.
Yeah, God. And I have one more question if
Of
any,
course.
yeah. How, so you said we should put that on IEP, and how would it look like on the writing,
Which part?
for accommodations or modification? So like
So
say curriculum modification, yeah.
right. So I think that it would be helpful, especially since for your particular case, especially since you've already received pushback that you're not entitled to modifications. I think that where it starts is in parent concerns. And that you can express that you're concerned that your child is not getting access to appropriately modified coursework that helps him connect to his IEP goals and helps maximize his participation in the classroom setting, and that you would like to meet to discuss, to take a look at that and discuss ways you can work together to identify, appropriate modifications that need to take place. I think that doing it that way, versus going to the modifications section and then starting to make a list of all the things you think he needs. I think it's initiating the discussion and coming together with that being the main point of that meeting. And then from there, because you want the team to be able to produce their own ideas as well, and not think, teachers can sometimes feel a little, um, not offended, that's for lack of better words, that, oh, you don't think I know what I'm doing? I'm a teacher, right? So making sure that we're saying we want to hear your ideas. We want to work collaboratively together. And if you need extra support because you're more unfamiliar with this, then we have the support, that can help you. But I think, yeah, the initial piece would be a little addendum to your IEP if you want to type it out and attach it, or if you want to actually write it in your parent concerns. Just that one of your concerns is that he's not getting the modifications he's entitled to, that he does have the right to be working below grade level in this classroom toward his IEP goals, and that you would like to work with the team to find ways to make meaningful and appropriate modifications to his coursework and lessons, so that he can access his goals and his learning environment.
Thank you.
Of course. Anyone else have a question?
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
My son, he has Down syndrome and he's 7 years old, just repeated kindergarten. He's going into first grade. The last 2 years, both years in kindergarten, a challenge that he's had is, I'm sure this is very common, but I'm not able to really come up with ideas for the team. Is the fact that, when it is a very high interest activity, for example, if he's on a play structure on the playground, and when it is time to go, he absolutely does not want to. And then he will just freeze. And he's fully included, So
Okay.
there are peer models to show him, okay, if the whistle blows, then we line up, and then we go. So that is a challenge for my son's team. I know they've tried a lot of things, and it's a part of his development. But I wanted to just, ask, are there ideas, for example, a 10-second rule? I'm not quite sure, how to help him along that path. So that is helpful for the team too. So that somebody is not stuck with him on the playground, or some days he doesn't want to leave the classroom, and either myself or my husband will actually have to go into the classroom and tell him, school is done, we got to go now. And then it is a process. It takes a lot of time, not only for ourselves, but also for the school team. So I'm just interested in learning if there are some ideas that I can support the team with. Thank you.
Yes, of course, and thank you for that question. I will tell you that is a very, very common challenge. Getting kiddos off the playground, and especially off of those nice big play structures that they love. It's a wonderful way to isolate yourself up there, and you got to come get me. I'm not coming down. It is something that I hear about a lot. And the first question I would ask is, and this is more of this would probably, in an IEP setting be more tied. Well, there would be accommodations involved for sure, but also more tied to behavior and behavior strategies. I'm curious to know, does he have a behavior intervention plan right now?
He does not a behavior intervention plan. Actually, I'm a school-based speech and language pathologist, and I work for
Oh,
the district, so it does get a little awkward.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but the first year, the way that his goal was written was again to help him with following directions. But the way it was written was more so as behavior management. But to me, it seemed like, well, as adults in his life, we haven't really modeled what is the right behavior yet to him. So to be worded that way, it seemed a little bit like, it just didn't seem appropriate to me to having, to hold him accountable for something that we just haven't taught him just as yet. So we talked about all of that, and then it was rephrased to understanding directions. But as I understand, it's not like he's not understanding what it has been asked of him, but it is more so, okay, what I'm doing for fun is just about to get over, and I'm not yet ready to transition. So towards the end of last school year, his IEP is in May. So it's just that we come up with ideas, but there's not enough time to implement because we're, the break of summer. But to me, it seemed like, is he understanding that concept that although recess is over today, you're going to have recess again tomorrow. We can still do something fun tomorrow. So his gen ed teacher did pick up that concept. Oh, maybe we should just help him understand you can do it again, but just a little later, or maybe tomorrow. So she was willing to try that, but I just don't know how that went because the school year just wrapped up. I know a psychologist is typically involved in cases like this, but backstage, not necessarily at every IEP meeting because he doesn't have a behavior goal or a behavior intervention plan. So to answer your question, I know I took the long route, but he doesn't have a behavior intervention plan or a goal on his IEP.
And so I think that while you and I could absolutely discuss strategies, there are strategies that will help maximize participation, make him feel like he has a sense of belonging. I don't know what all they've tried. Obviously, clear expectations, visual aids, doing a first then visual so he understands here's an expectation, but here's what you get for following that expectation. Big helper roles, being the person who blows the whistle or rings the bell, maybe being someone who administers a hand sanitizer or passes out things. So something that empowers him to feel like, oh, I've got another big job to do. And not only that, I get to participate with my peers. I get to be a big helper to my teacher. So front loading the expectation, but also maybe redirecting with something like a job can be really helpful for our students with Down syndrome because they are always eager to be able to participate, and a lot of times they don't have that opportunity. And so then it becomes, and then it also depends on how the team is reacting to the behavior, right? What's the consequence? So if we're looking at when we know, okay, every day at recess, this is what happens? Well, we have to then say, so we know that the antecedent is that, it's transitioning from a preferred activity to something that's less preferred, but also taking a look at what is the thing that they're transitioning into. Making sure, so let's say a student is transitioning from from recess into sitting down at a desk and having to work on math problems. And let's say the work's not being appropriately modified, and it looks like a big jumble of numbers. It feels like a large demand. It causes anxiety, and now we start to get escape and avoidance. And then let's say he gets to go and sit out in the hall and doesn't have to complete the math work. Well, now we're seeing the consequence to that behavior, and it's serving a function. He gets to escape and avoid the thing he doesn't want to do. And so I think it's taking a really close look and understanding that antecedent, understanding what function the behavior is serving. And by having, there's also the piece of, by having a behavior goal, then you now have accountability to the team, right? Because one thing we have to really be mindful about is that when a student is participating in general education, I've seen it many, many times. When we start to see behavior, teams start having conversations about a different placement setting. But what we do know is that we can't place a student into a different setting because of behavior if the team has not done their due diligence to support behavior, develop a plan, and implement it with full fidelity, with all the supports and service, in place in order to make progress. And so without anything being on that IEP, it can start to build and snowball into something that feels unmanageable for them, but yet they're not tied to or held accountable for any goals. And so I think that while recommending certain strategies is great, I think having some accountability on that IEP, and at least starting with, it doesn't have to be a full BIP, but asking for a behavior goal, so that they can tell you specifically what strategies they're going to employ to try to reduce or eliminate this behavior. And then we can add ideas to that, right? Based on what we know about students with Down syndrome. But that accountability piece is huge, especially for a student in gen ed, because unfortunately I see it a lot, where a parent calls me and out of nowhere now, their child has such significant behaviors in the classroom. They don't think this is the right placement setting for them, but yet they don't have any type of behavior plan in place. And so understanding that they have to be held accountable for behavior before they can change placement is also a good thing to know. A lot of parents don't know that. So
Thank you
of
so much.
course. Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Oh, I don't see. I have a little chat here.
Here.
Have you seen the
Hi.
Supporting Positive Discipline? Yes, I have seen this. I have seen the book. I just saw the
Elizabeth?
Michelle. Yes. Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So I have a question also a little bit similar from the previous one. I have Valentina that she's repeating, she will start the second year of kindergarten. She's in general education, but from the very beginning, she was recommended school. We shall her into her neighbor school where her sister.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're starting to break up. I don't know if anyone else is having a difficult time hearing you, but it's freezing up.
Okay, let me see. How is it now? No.
It is, well, so far it seems better. We'll see.
Maybe I can put I can turn off the camera. Maybe that helps. Let me see. Here. Okay, I'll try again.
Okay.
Okay, so she was recommended to another school because her neighbor school doesn't have a meal severe program where she was recommended. We try a lot and we got her into her neighbor school because they were saying we don't have any experience, and well, we said if you don't start, you won't have any experience, never. So they opened the doors for her. It was a hard year last year because of she started with behavior issues, but we have really a good relation with the team. We work really good, and then at the end they recommend us again to go to another school. We thought that it was unfair because she didn't go to, because she was sick. She was absent a lot of days and lots of other things that we thought she needs another opportunity. She's one of the youngest in birth. And other things that we thought, no, we need an additional year. And so we stayed her, and she's starting again the second year in the same school. Okay. The relation between the school team and us, it ended really good. But I'm a little bit, my concern is that, like, because of all these that they were recommended us, and we said another thing, I want to keep having that good relationship because of Valentina, my kid. And I think that one of the things that can be improved, and I want lots of ideas about that to bring to the school, is about participation. You know, for me, they did lots of accommodations, a little bit of modifications. We can't complain, and we are really thankful about that. But I think that Valentina, she needs an aid 101, that she has it from bell to bell. But, you know, sometimes it's like more than a bridge. It's more like a wall between her peers. The teacher is really nice, but she is giving the same curriculum as she's been doing like for plenty of years. She didn't change much. So Valentina is like in the end of the group, in her special chair, sometimes very bored, not motivated. So I think that is one of the key things for her to feel more the sense of belonging, to participate more, and those behaviors will start to improve. But I would like to give them ideas. I'm sure that maybe I can reach you and have a Zoom meeting and
yeah, absolutely. So I'd be happy to, whether it's with you and the team, or just the team, if they'd like to brainstorm, you know, in that a different, you know, an environment with just me, or it's a group effort. We absolutely are happy to meet with our members and their education teams separately or together to discuss practical strategies and ideas. Of course, you're welcome to share the PDF slides with your teacher as well, that lists some of those examples that we went through to help maximize participation. But based on, it sounds like it would really benefit you and your team to create a participation plan and work together to identify those times, like we talked about from the examples in the slides, of where can, you know, what are her strengths and what are her motivators and interests, what are her current levels, and how can we take that information and find ways to set up opportunities to help maximize her participation, make her feel that sense of belonging, empower her as a valued member of the classroom, and then see how that impacts the way she navigates, the way she behaves in the setting. And I think coming in, you know, I think it's it's great that you want to maintain that relationship with the team, that you want to let them know that you support them and that you want to still have that healthy relationship with them. And so I think that letting them know that you understand, it's a big task, and that you've got a resource who can meet with them, who can work with them, who can help, try to bridge some of these gaps with them, is always a good start. And letting them know we're not advocates, we're a neutral third party. We partner with school districts all across the Bay Area because we recognize that our teachers need as much support as our members and their kids do, so that everybody can really start working together. And so I think that's the other piece. When you do talk to your school teams about utilizing us as a resource, or maybe you even introduce me through an email so that we can connect and we can share some of the services that we offer for free to school districts all around the Bay Area, they need to understand that we are not an advocacy service for Down syndrome, that we are a neutral third party, and just a valuable resource.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that is one of the pieces that I keep pushing, and I didn't get last year, the training piece, because I was always telling them we are really grateful that they opened the doors finally for Valentina. They were recommending another school. We pushed a lot for an additional kindergarten year, and they were telling us no, but we got it. But yeah, it's not enough, it's not enough just to open the doors. You have to train about Down syndrome, about inclusion. This is new for everyone, so that is like really important for them, and for Valentina also, obviously, for them to understand the special way that they have to learn, that is not typical. So that was also like the other part, that the why that we thought that she deserved like another opportunity, because they were doing a lot but not going into the bottom line, that they can more.
Right. And it's all, and that's, I think, like, because you did get this placement, and, letting them know, recognizing that this is a process, that everyone's learning, and we're all, but the goal is that we're all learning together, and that we're all working together to support each other through this process, because it's ever evolving. There's some trial and error involved. There's just getting creative and hopefully, encouraging them to feel excited about collaborating with you or collaborating with us, because it's such a really wonderful and valuable experience for any educator who's never had an opportunity to work with someone with a significant disability in their classroom. There's so many really wonderful and valuable things that come from that experience. And I think most educators, after they are in that and they have experienced it, it changes a lot for them, and it changes a lot about their perspective, and it can really change who they are as a teacher and how they want to approach teaching, and educating not only students with disabilities, but their entire classroom of individuals. And so it's kind of that, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. We know it's a big job. It's ever evolving. We're here to work with you. And we expect some trial and error, but let us partner with you, partner with DSCBA, and we all together can help support each other to help foster success.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing, and this is more like an opinion, but from your point of view and your experience, having going through all this path, that they ended the year recommending Valentina to another school. They ended the year like pushing her to first grade, and we like the the additional kindergarten year was something that we cannot argue. It was like the final decision. They finally say yes. But the other part of the puzzle, that was the placement, we said no to what they were recommending. So I'm always like, how this year will be with this. Sorry about my English is not good. I will try my best to
Don't apologize. No,
okay, to
no need
express.
to apologize for that.
You know, they in their heads, in their minds, they know that Valentina needs to go to another school, and she will start this year just because their parents have the right to say no, and we did that. So how do you, from your experience, do you like the following year could change their mind, or it's difficult to change their mind when they just recommend another placement? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's so individualized, right? Understanding the attitude of the team, their philosophy about inclusive practices and inclusivity in schools in general, their willingness and to learn, to stay open, to look at this experience as something that could be really valuable for everybody. So attitude by, the team, the teacher, everyone, that makes a big difference. Some people learn from these experiences. We see positive results, and teams, see that it's working. And then sometimes people are super closed off, and parents have to advocate and fight every single year for that placement. And so I mean, it really is. It's very individualized. I've seen it go both ways.
Got it.
Yeah.
And for the training, I was thinking about going to knock the door like directly to the district, because last year I talked so much with the principal, and she didn't got I don't know. Do you think it would be worth it to go directly to the district we are in Palo Alto, or keep talking to the principal and see now with your relationship?
Yeah, it's that can also be hit or miss, right? The districts are pretty overwhelmed with a lot of work, and while you can introduce it to the district, we have worked with districts. We've provided district-wide trainings. It never hurts if you want to reach out to your district and just help them become aware of what opportunities are available. A lot of times there's pushback because they're like, we don't have the resources, we can't pay our educators to have to attend these trainings, and so we can't obligate them to that. But one thing you can do is, let's say they're not interested. Let's say the principal is not interested in having his team attend a training. You can always offer information, that whether it's recordings, whether it's PDFs, to your teacher. If it's not working with the principal, then maybe your teacher or someone else on the team would be interested in learning more, and you can start there. Maybe your school would be willing to have me come out and do an ability awareness presentation, and it starts there. And then it's a warm handshake, and someone sees someone from the connection who says, yeah, we're a great resource. How can we help you? And
Nice.
so sometimes it's just about breaking the ice,
Totally got it. Yeah. So, maybe that is a good starting point. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and everyone, for your time. And this has been really helpful.
Of course. Oh yeah, sorry. I just saw the question here. The Saturday, able to take a look at, check out of the literary math curriculum. Yeah. You are able to absolutely take a look at the Lending Library. It's right when you walk in the door to the left. And I don't know if anyone is on site who would be able to I'm not quite sure if there's anyone on site who's actually able to process that information that day. So maybe we can figure out, maybe we can connect outside of this via email. And so they might be able to leave something for you or give a heads up to whoever the program manager is that's there that day, and they might be able to help with that. But sometimes Saturdays are hard to get those things done because we don't have our person in the office all the time.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, unless anyone else has questions, we can go ahead and wrap this up. And of course, if you have any lingering questions or things you think of later, you're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm available via email. We can always make time to connect over the phone or chat via Zoom. We're here to support you in any way we can. And thank you guys for your time. I appreciate you attending today's meeting, and I hope to see you guys soon at another session. Or we've got our IEP binder builder workshop in person coming up at the end of August. We'll be making an announcement about that, but it's Saturday, August 31st, from 10 to 1, I think. And we're just going to kind of be going through the key components of the IEP, helping you feel more empowered with the things you really need to pay attention to and know about, how to communicate those needs with your school teams, and how to stay organized and on top of things like timelines, communication, documentation. So that's what that's going to be about. We'll be creating a one-page profile, an IEP at a glance, and just helping you feel more prepared for your next IEP meeting. So I hope to see some of you guys there, and if not, at a presentation in the future. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.